Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and if you've been a fan of sports, WFAN, so many great people along the way, and one of my favorite people is our gentleman today. He's our guest, and his radio career began 24 years ago. He's going to tell us all about it, but he's the man behind the scenes. All the guests that you see on WFAN, he's got a lot to do with that. He works endlessly. He's a credit to the business. It is my pleasure to introduce to you the producer for WFAN. He's done so many shows, Mr. Pete Hoffman. And Pete, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Mike, thanks for having me, man. I'm honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
No problem. So, Pete, I think the first thing I want to ask you more than anything else, because it always fascinates me, we all have great stories. How did the love for teams like the Mets and the Jets, how did that happen for you?
The Mets is more deeper rooted as it goes back to my grandfather. Like a lot of other people, I think, their grandfathers or a relative of theirs was a Dodger or a Giant fan. And then when both teams left New York and kind of like, being National League teams, they left and it felt like once the Mets came to town, they were going to stick with the National League fan base. So they joined to the Mets. They stuck with the Mets. So my grandfather was a Mets fan. But on top of that, too, there was kind of like this random thing. I don't have the pictures with me right now, but one of my great uncles participated in the the logo for the Mets. When the Mets came into play, there was a contest to see, hey, come up with something cool, and they will pick you to be the logo of the Mets. And I got to be honest with you, I see this picture. I'll send it to you later on. It's not identical to what the Mets have right now, but it is a clear it's definitely an inspiration to what the Mets logo is. It's got the city skyline. It's got a bridge. Now the Mets aren't scripted, but they're in block letters. The Mets METS is in block letters. Colors orange, blue. So it just felt like not saying that the Mets stole it, but it was very close to it. That being said, though, that's where the history came from. My father's side of the family, the Mets, and it just kind of grew from there, going to games back in the day. So my mother's side, Italian, full Italian, old Yankee fans. My father's side, old Mets fans.
And let me ask you, Pete, were you kind of too young to remember that 86 World Series? I was 10 years old. I can remember it. I'm obviously a Yankees fan, but I remember at the time, my father had always told me, we cannot root for the Red Sox. We don't want the Red Sox to break that curse. So I was rooting for the Mets in that World Series. And, one of the Mets that I really liked, and you're going to laugh, but I just always thought he hustled every time he went out there, and that was Rafael Santana. And, that team, they refused to die. Everybody talks about the Bill Buckner play, but they forget that there were 2 outs, nobody on, and the Mets tied that before that play ever happened. So, were you too young to remember it, or?
I definitely was too young to remember it, but it's weird. The one thing I do recall was around that time, again, I was 4 years old, but around that time, I remember going to California to go visit some relatives. And I just remember for some reason I bought a Met hat in California. Why? I don't remember, but that's what we did. That's what I wanted. So we did that. But I don't really remember the World Series in 86. But obviously, I've relived that moment so many times. Who hasn't watched the 1986 Bill Buckner play with Mookie Wilson? Who has? For the Rico Brogna that I produced with Evan Roberts, we legitimately rewatched Game 6 this past offseason. And then last year we watched Game 7, because who remembers Game 7? Nobody does. We just remember the Game 6. There was a Game 7 afterwards, which is just as crazy. So I wish I was in it at that moment. That's the funny thing is, as a diehard sports fan, Mike, if you're a Yankee fan, then you guys understand how unbelievable a championship is. If you're a Giants fan, you understand how unbelievable the feeling of winning a championship is. I had 94 with the Rangers. That was about it. I was 12 years old. I really didn't appreciate it as much back then. Because that's the last time I won anything as a fan. But yeah, like I didn't have those memories like I did like in 2000 losing to the Yankees, like in 2006 Carlos Beltran striking out with to potentially take the lead or win the game against the Cardinals, or 2015 basically getting shellacked to the Royals. So I've had a lot of bad memories. The best memories, unfortunately, the 86 World Series, I don't recall.
Right. I mean, the only thing I can tell you, Pete, as a Yankees fan, these bad memories that you've had as a Mets fan, losing a couple World Series and things like that, you will appreciate when you do win a World Series, because you know what it was like to go through the losing. Now, for me, it was the other way around. I saw some bad Yankee years when I was a kid. I mean, Andy Hawkins, Pascual Perez, all those guys. So when they won in 96, I mean, it was the greatest feeling in the world. But then what happened was right around when they lost to the Diamondbacks in 01, things started to change, and I started to see some painful losses, especially the Red Sox in 04. So when they won again in 09, I appreciated it even more because I had to see some losses where I lost sleep over. So I promise you this, that when the time comes and you do see a championship, it'll make up for a lot of that bad stuff that you saw.
Mike, you say that though, but like, I mean, if you know Joe Beningo at all,
Yeah.
the betting thing to do, the best thing to do is to bet on the Jets, Mets, Knicks, or Rangers as soon as Joe Beningo goes into the grave, because maybe that's when the luck will change. It never feels like it's going to change anytime soon. Like, at least, here's the crazy thing about rooting for your for your teams, Mike. The Yankees, not trying to say it's easy to root for because you haven't won since 09. Okay. But you have this pedigree. You have the history of winning. You do go to the playoffs every year. There's a lot of fan bases that when you take a step back and look at just, the entire sports community, there are more teams than not that fail. Like, think about it. Like, I tell my kids all the time, like, it's tough to win a championship. There's only one winner every year. Like, so if for anybody to say that, oh, your team is a failure because you didn't win a championship, well, there's 29 failures every year in baseball. There's 31 failures in football. It's tough to win. But more often than not, unless you're like a Yankee or a Dodger these days, like, you're not making the playoffs every year. It's tough to do. So it's really, you have to kind of like check yourself and be like, this may be a long run. This may never come. And unfortunately, I'm a Mets fan diehard. I'm never going to give up. But there is a possibility that I'm going to die and I will never see a championship with the Mets. It's a possibility.
Right. Now, Pete, I was going to bring this up later in the interview, but since we're talking about it right now. Now, number one, from day one, when you and I talked, you told me that they were not going to sign Pete Alonso. You believed that. I didn't think it was possible after the year he had. But here's the other thing, and this is what disappointed me a little bit with callers from WFAN, and I'll even say a couple of the hosts. I won't mention names because I don't believe that that's right to do. But I will say this, that one of the reasons we root for teams, I don't care what anybody says, is we do fall in love with players that do great. I love Don Mattingly. He was my guy. I loved him. He was just the guy growing up that I cheered for. And you want your team, when they do win, to have somebody that came from that farm system, that grew up, playing for the Mets and, was a homegrown. And I just felt, and this is not directed at you because you and Evan were totally different. You guys were really upset that they let him go. But I felt like too many Met fans were giving David Stearns and Steve Cohen a pass and basically saying, oh, this is the way we're going to do it. This is the Mets reset. And I thought that was disrespectful to Pete because Pete Alonso did so much for the Mets. That really bothered me, how people were just so quick to be like, it's okay. Because to me, it's not okay. He was a homegrown guy. He wasn't having a bad year. He had a great year. He should have been signed.
Mike, I 1,000% agree with you. I think that really the biggest issue with Pete Alonso is this. It's his defense. That's the biggest debate that we can have, because it's not the fact that he's not a solid hitter. Like, I don't care whether his average has gone from, this past year was 272. A couple of years ago it was 217. It was 240 before that. Like, his average has fluctuated. His OPS maybe not be as amazing as Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani. Okay, fine. He's not Shohei Ohtani. He's not Aaron Judge, but he's a guy who you put in that lineup. And this is what I always say. I don't care if it's a home run hitter or just a power hitter, whatever it is. He drives in runs. He could put in 120 RBIs in his sleep. That's what he does. And you can't just sleep on that. You can't just be like, we'll bring somebody else in and they'll just do the same thing. It's not that easy. Look around the league. Like, he was the second most RBIs in the league behind Kyle Schwarber. So I don't like the pass of like, we could just find anybody else over Pete Alonso because he can't play defense. The biggest bugaboo about Pete Alonso is he can't throw the ball. And I don't disagree. I'm not going to sit there and defend that and be like, you guys are not looking at the right thing. No, he has an issue throwing the ball around the diamond. But the other things he does defensively, he's not as bad as people make him out to be. He is a much more than serviceable first baseman. He just doesn't look graceful. Like, I don't look graceful doing many things in life. Pete Alonso does not look graceful playing first base. But guess what? He makes the plays. Like, for majority of the time, he makes the plays. But he won't make one play and will highlight that. That's like Aaron Judge. I could sit there and say, Aaron Judge, you can't throw anybody out from the outfield these days. His elbow's shot. The guy can't play right field anymore. Is that factual? Yeah. There was a fact that he was lollipopping the ball and towards the tail end of the season because his elbow was all screwed up. Is that his rest of his career? No. Now, there's a difference because we all know that Aaron Judge has a really phenomenal arm, and we all know that Aaron Judge is a really good defender. Pete Alonso continues to grow as a defensive first baseman. He continues to get better. If you think that last year him throwing the ball around the diamond didn't hurt him mentally, he's going to go and make that like a priority this offseason. And I trust in him to do that. Nobody else gives him that credit. Nobody else wants to give him that credit. They just think he's a butcher. And they think he's because WAR says he's not a good ball player. He's just a mundane player. I got to be honest with you. We did a podcast the other day with the Mets free agency, who we lost to free agency, and we came down to that Zach Wheeler might have been the most regrettable free agent to lose because of how good he was after he left the Mets to go to the Phillies. I'm going to tell you right now, Pete Alonso may not be better going forward, but he's going to be at least the same the next 5 years, where I'm going to sit there and say, we should have had him. He's going to have 500 home runs at the end of his career. There was no reason why he shouldn't have been a Met when he hit his 500th home run. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I saw no evidence that he was slowing down with the bat. I mean, listen, the year he had, to me, I have no problem. Bo Bichette was a good sign-in, but I can't understand how you could give him all that money and you couldn't do the same for Pete. Like, 5 years was not risky, in my opinion, to give
Mike. Oh, but here's the other thing too is so this is where the deep dive of my criticism of David Stearns is. If you're gonna give Bo Bichette 3 years, $128 million or whatever the contract was, if you're gonna try to get Kyle Tucker for 4 years for $220 million, you telling me you couldn't have said, Pete, listen, we legitimately don't want you for 5 years, but we'll give you $120 million for 3. Like, I think that's more than fair to overpay you for 3 years and say, see you later. We'll figure out what's going to happen in 4 years from here on out. But like the first 3, they're yours. Take the money. You're making a lot. And then you go back to free agency at 34 years old. Everyone has made Pete Alonso to be this guy who's older than he is, right? Like last year, I remember everyone saying he's on the wrong side of 30. He hadn't hit 30 years old yet. He hadn't played a game as a 30-year-old yet before he signed that contract. And everyone's like, he's on the wrong side of 30. They're just making things up. And that's the thing. They're trying to to fit a narrative to say, oh, well, everyone says after 30 years old, you decline. There's been nothing to prove that Pete Alonso's declining as a hitter, as far as his numbers go, as far as his offensive production goes. You could sit there and say, oh, well, look at Chris Davis. I could tell you Chris Davis. I could tell you Albert Pujols. Albert Pujols, I understand they were a different hitter, a different type of player, but still, Albert Pujols was a power hitter and hit how many home runs even into his late career? It really was after 35 where he started to dive a little bit. So I still think there's a good 5 years left of Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, I do as well. And I almost feel like, too, that their attitude was, to the fans anyway, you wanted Soto, we got you Soto. You can't get mad at us for getting rid of Pete. But to me, he was the heart and soul of the Mets. Like, I mean, as a non-Mets fan, I saw that all the time. I mean, he seemed like he really loved being there as well.
Oh, well, I love Pete. I'm never going to sit there and say that he was the heart and soul of the team. I do think he appreciated being a Met up until last year. Like, even though last year he had one of his best years, arguably, I don't think he was I think he knew that the end was coming. I think he knew that the negotiation process wasn't going his way the prior offseason, and that he was not a David Stearns guy, and that he'd have to put up an amazing year and hit free agency, and then basically he moved on. I think mentally he had moved on. Was he a great Met? Of course. I don't know if he was the heart and soul. I think that's part of the problem was that, Nimmo was more of a captain, I think, in a sense than Alonso was. Alonso was more of like a free soul, I guess, in that aspect. He just kind of was a march by his own drum and stuff like that, to his own beat, stuff like that. So
Right.
You had different leaders throughout the clubhouse. I don't know if Alonso was a leader, but he definitely wanted to be here up until last year's negotiations. I won't lie about that. That I think was the turning point. And he had a great season, and he said, all right, I'm out of here. Like, didn't even bother to like negotiate with the Mets to try to be like, what can we do to make this work? Because I want to stay. Think about this, Mike. If you and I are like, I don't want to leave the Mets at all, you're going to try to find a way to stay there. He had a better offer, $155 million for 5 years. Not saying it was an enormous amount of money, but like if you really wanted to be a Met, you would have tried to find a way to stick around a couple more years. And he left. He opted to take the money. So good for him.
Right. So, Pete, obviously your foot in the door came in 2002, but let me ask you, when did you decide that you might want to get into this type of field? Did you go to broadcasting school or anything like that?
So I was always a big musician. Well, I was always a big sports fan too, but I love music. And I picked up my first guitar when I was 12 years old. I loved grunge music. I loved like the 90s music and stuff like that. So I started becoming I tried to create my own bands and be in like music acts and stuff like that. And we played shows all over the place. So throughout like college and stuff like that, I was messing around. Well, high school, college, I was messing around with that stuff. And I did go to take some classes at like a community college, and I was involved actually. I went to Manhattanville for a couple of years, and I was involved with a radio station there. And then I went to community college, took some more classes over there, and then I just kind of walked into an internship at 92.3 KRock, home of Howard Stern. But I was there through a lot of turnover. So like Stern was there from 02 to the end of 05. David Lee Roth came in at 06. Then Opie and Anthony came in. And then we flipped the formats back to top 40. So I was there for like 7 years of a lot of like up and down stuff, but it was a great experience. I still love music. I have a passion for music. So that's originally why I got into radio, was because I just like to go to concerts. I mean, I basically lived at Roseland. It was down the block from my office. So I lived at Roseland. I would be there like 4 times a week, every single show. It didn't make a difference. Just walk in. I know that half the people that work there, and I would just have a good time on a weekly basis. And then in 09, I left to try to actually, build on my music career. Didn't work out as well as I wanted it to, which is okay. And then in 2012, I went back to radio as, I worked with Mark Chernoff in my days at KRock at 92.3, and there was just an opening in promotion, so I kind of went back that way in 2012, and then I found my way in programming, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and it's funny too, Pete, because you really didn't have that goal to get like a lot of people that go to sports radio stations, like obviously WFAN, they have had a dream about going there. They listen to shows like Mike and the Mad Dog, I Miss in the Morning, obviously Steve Summers and things like that. But you really like had no desire to do talk radio or be involved in radio early on in your life.
It's not that I didn't. Right. I mean, I don't think it was a dream of mine to do it per se. Like, I enjoyed it. I loved music. I love listening to it because, I mean, let me tell you something. No matter who you are, especially as a Mets fan, like the most peaceful thing ever was leaving a New York Mets game, being so frazzled by the fact that your team just got smoked again and you're upset, and you turn the radio on to hear Schmooze and hear his monologue about how he's making fun of the team. Like, that made me feel like, oh, thank God. Like, I don't have to be as angry as I feel right now. I get to listen to Steve Summers kind of mock this team, and it makes me feel better. But I always had, like, I mean, listen, I used to, like, drive around. I was a, delivery guy for pharmaceutical drugs for a little bit. I do a bunch of different things and be in the car. I listen to 92.3 with Kane and Cabby or Booker or Howard Stern when I was going to school in the morning. Then I'd flip on 102.7, which was Opie and Anthony. I was there, was listening to the, obviously when they had the Sex for Sam days. I listened to all that stuff live. It was crazy. But then I'd also flip on, WFAN. So those are the three places that I'd flip on all the time, have on a regular rotation. So whether it was Joe and Evan, Mike and the Mad Dog, Boomer and Carton at the time, Boomer and Gio. I mean, I was always listening to – those were the three places that I'd frequent the most. Obviously, when Opie and Anthony kind of left 102.7, I kind of stopped with that. But between those three originally, and then went back and forth between 92.3 and 101.9. But did I have the dream to be on air and be a sports talk guy? I don't think I ever really did. I just kind of fell into it. But I did always have a entertainment background. So that I won't lie with. I always wanted to do some sort of entertainment because I love it. Like, whether it's comedy, whether it's sports, whether it's music. Music is my numero uno next to sports and then comedy, but I love it all. So I did feel like I wanted to be in the industry somewhere.
Right. And Pete, one of the things too that people may not realize, when you intern, yes, you're at the radio station, you're kind of seeing how the game works a little bit, but at the same time, there's stressful moments because they're going to have you do different things, and you have to understand that, like, they may say to you, listen, Pete, we have a promotional thing coming up. We have to pick up a bunch of balloons at this place and stuff like that. So you do different things as an intern, but there's also some stress that comes with it because you might be helping out with the show. And listen, once guys get established and they're talk show hosts, I don't think they mean to be demanding, but they indirectly are demanding. So that could come with some stress as well. So it's not as easy as I think people might think it is.
Well, when I first started as an intern in 2002, it was a very odd way to even get the job. I remember this. So, because it was in the promotion department, but I remember taking an interview with Al Dukes for 102.7, and he was the first interview I ever had for any sort of like job or internship. And he doesn't even remember this as much as I do, or he might not remember this at all. But regardless, I sat down with them. We were talking about things. It seemed like things were progressing. And then he goes, so, we don't have a lot of shows available because right now, Opie and Anthony, they're kind of on suspension for the Sex for Sam thing. would you want to work anywhere else for any other show? I said, no, not really. And I kind of just passed up. I think I got an offer for the Run of Fez show, and that, that kind of got me out of that job. Though I would have loved to have worked there. I was really an Opie and Anthony fan and wanted to work for that show. So I kind of like, I'll just go to the next thing. And when I moved on to KRock, I didn't realize this, but I screwed up the dates. I showed up a week after my interview, and I met with Scott Rizzuto, was the name of the promotions guy at the time. I think he ended up moving to St. Louis to be on air over there with Steve Covino, who is another name that floats around, who's was on Sirius for a long time and now does Fox Sports stuff. But they both interviewed me and like, hey, you're here a week late. And I'm like, whoops, I screwed that up. But they hired me on the spot, and I walked in there, and I'm like, it was a different time. Like, I got lucky to walk in the door, but you're right. Like, things were so different compared to where it is now. Like, there's a lot of personalities around there. Like, Stern was an amazing personality, but was really, to me, was cool. But then there was other guys that were around there, other people around there that wouldn't, hey, I'm a guy. They don't want to see the guys. Oh, there's a girl around. Hey, I know your name, type of thing. Different vibes, different things that happened back in 2002 that really don't happen as much now. At least I hope not. At least not around me. But that being said, though, so yes, there were different vibes. There were different tensions. Obviously, like dealing with huge personalities like Howard Stern, you walk around like on eggshells, you feel. But that's, I think, just the perception. He wasn't really that bad when I was around. I got to be honest with you. To me, Howard Stern was always cool. And as I got to know people, everyone became really cool too. So there are pressures and there's stresses, but for the most part, most of these hosts and DJs I became really good friends with. If anybody remember Kane and Cabby, I was really close with Cabby for a long time. Unfortunately, RIP to him. He passed away a few years ago. Kane has reached out to me a bunch. We've spoken quite a lot. Chris Booker, I was friends with for a long time as well. So in the end, like, yeah, you start out as a newbie, but they kind of make you feel comfortable after a while. The bigger names that you are intimidated by, they kind of make you feel like, hey, you're just part of the team. Yeah, they'll rag on you, which is kind of what we do at WFAN these days. We all kind of like, poke each other. But at the end of the day, you're all part of the same team. You're all part of the same, goal. So even though as an intern, it might be tough, I think that's just kind of like, they're trying to break your chops to see, hey, where do you fit in here? Because you could be an asset and we want to make sure that you're cool,
Exactly. And Pete, like anything else, when you started out at FAN, you had to do things like be a tape op, be a board op. And what, is people may not think that it's a big deal, but when you run that board, everything has to be right because you got to make sure everybody's levels are good. You got to make sure that like when it's time to play a sound bite, you have it ready, things like that. So, I mean, people will probably say, oh, you don't have to talk. You don't have to go get guests. You're just there controlling the board. But basically, you're controlling how the radio is going to sound to the audience. So I think like that was a good way to start your, radio career at FAN. You definitely got a lot of, good things by doing that.
Well, I'll tell you this much. So one thing that kids I don't think will appreciate today is you do have to go through levels. You do have to start from the bottom up. Like at least that's how it was when I was making my way up in the industry. A lot of people now just think that they could just go on the mic and just like at the radio station, I could do what they do. Yeah, you can. I mean, a lot of people can get on the mic and talk, but what are you saying? What are you doing? A lot of people I know throughout the years knew where that on-air button was, but didn't know how to do all the other stuff behind the scenes. And a lot of things that we do is based off of trust. Like if I'm working with you, it's a very intimate thing. Like even though there's a lot of listeners, people are calling in from every which way, people are reacting on social media. There's a lot of people that are tuning in
at all hours, at all times. They can go back and listen to you now. There's a lot happening at all times. It's still intimate because the office is basically two people. It's me. Like when I host an overnight shift, it's me and the person running the board, the producer. So if I don't trust you, it's tough to do, because I don't have that person that I can fall back on and be like, hey, listen, like, rescue me if I need, you need to take a quick break and, catch my breath, or grab a sip of water or something like that. It's certain things that are like, hey, I need to be able to know that I got somebody on my side over there. And a lot of people aren't working, a lot of younger kids don't realize that there is a respect part to this. And I don't mean to come off as a jerk or whatever, but like, there are a lot of people that think that it's easy and they don't have to go through the through that process anymore. They could just skip that. And you can go online, you can build your own podcast, you could do what you want, and I'm all about the independency. Like, I'll sit there. I'm actually gonna, after this interview, I'm gonna meet up with a college student who was interning over the summer, and I kept a very good relationship with him. Fantastic kid, great worker. I could trust him to do basically my job if I needed to, but it was more not to do it so it's like, I can sit back today. It's more like, hey, dude, you're here. Get the experience, get the opportunity, understand what you're doing. And today you're going to learn how to do my job. But then tomorrow when you come in, then I'm going to have you go and give me a monologue. And then after that, I'm going to have you do this and cut, do a lot of things that maybe you wouldn't normally be able to do or wouldn't think about doing, but I'm going to push you to get there. Like, there's ways to do things. And I think that, like, for example, this kid in particular has been grinding back at school, work, doing his job, but then also doing podcasting. And I'm all about that. I'm all about teaching, I'm all about helping people, but you also have to, like, go through the process to get there too. It's not just like, hey, I got a job here, so now I'm going to turn the mic on. And I think I learned that, not the hard way, but I think I definitely learned that. And I was the most nervous ever was dealing with Steve Summers. The first time I ever had to do a board op shift with him, I remember I didn't screw the open up. Like, I hit the open, unlike I did with Carton, the Carton show this past January. But I didn't hit his piece that we created properly. Like, I missed it by like a second or two. And in the, when I did finally hit it, and this background, the music's playing in the background, all the stuff is going on, he hits in the talkback. He's like, Peter, is everything okay at home? Like, because I missed like the open by like or the piece for like 2 seconds. He was a perfectionist, and I love Steve. Steve is like the great person to learn from, to be honest with you, because he takes you through a lot of different levels of anxiety. You're dealing with always on the move, because especially he's an older guy, so he needs to rely on you for a lot more things. So yeah, there was a lot of lessons learned very early on, and I'm glad I went through that stuff for sure.
Yeah, and you touched on it just now about learning from Steve, and it doesn't get any better than that. And the one thing that I just finished reading this book, and it was a great read, and I would encourage everybody who's a sports fan, never mind just a radio fan, to read it. But yep, there it is. And it was tremendous.
And look at this. For all the Rico guys out there, I might not be in this book, but he did sign a copy to me. How about that? Unlike Evan Roberts, who forgot to put me as a thank you in his book.
And, but to bring Steve up, and I also wanted to bring Richard Neer up, because the two of these guys have been a fixture at the station since its, inception. And the thing of it is that I look at them and I just look at guys who go out there and they want to do a show, but they're very helpful as well. And to me, like Steve especially, I've always heard, I remember Craig Carton said this years ago, the first person that went out of his way to be nice to him when he came to the station was Steve Summers. And it just goes to show that he understands what it was like to have to go through those rough roads. And he was always willing to help. He didn't care who you were. And that's always what stood out to me about him. Not just that he's tremendous when he's on air and he's got the great bits that he does, but he's a, tremendous human being as well.
Steve is one of those guys where when you produce for him, he demands a lot, which is great because it puts you on notice. It makes you always on your toes. But you're right. Like what I would see around the office, the people that went to him, his generosity, him being genuine to people and always talking about, it's great to meet you, whatever you need, this and that. He still is a kind human being. And it's great to see him now because now he's doing his podcast. So he comes to the office twice a week and we see him and he's phenomenal. He still brings that same charisma with him, same things that we laugh at over and over and over. But he has that generosity to him. Richard Neer, I worked with him for a long time as well. He's just a very peaceful human being. The way he goes about his shows, I know that a lot of diehard listeners love his Saturday and Sunday morning shows because, you woke up and you heard somebody who wasn't sitting there and, like myself, sometimes I go on these tangents and yell and scream and get upset. Richard would handle it a different way. And that's what makes him great. And that's what makes a lot of other people great too, is everyone has their own personality. There's no two the same people on our station. I don't care how much, Evan, myself, Tommy Lugauer, whomever is a Met fan. We're all Mets fans in our own different ways. Joe Beningo, the Yankee fans out there, whether it's Chris McMonagle, whether it's Sean Marash, they're all different in their own way. So that's what makes the radio great. Like we do have some similarities. We're all nuts, but that's a good thing. I think, sometimes you have to be nuts when you're fans of sporting teams because you can't, it's no possible way that you could be a diehard sports fan, put on a game, watch your team lose at any point in time and be like, this is nothing. We'll be back tomorrow. That doesn't happen. There's always, and even when you win, was it really good? Could you have done it better? I mean, there's always something to critique,
Yeah, there really is. And the thing about Richard, too, that I know you enjoy a lot is he's a big music buff as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
oh, my God.
He loves music and he's worked at music stations. So, I mean, he is like the perfect guy for you to listen to because you love sports and he loves sports, but he loves music as well. So when you're listening to him, I mean, a lot of what he's saying, you're engaged in.
Yeah, and it's funny whenever he's on, because he's not at the office. He's down in North Carolina. He's been there for a while. But that being said, like you'll put him on in the background as like the other show's going on because he checks in sooner, and you always hear him strumming his guitar at some point in time. That's just something he always does, and it's like that's just so chill. Like being able just to like before you go on air, just be able to strum a little bit, to listen to some music, do what you want to do, and to be fair, that's everybody. Like working with Carton, he has his music that he listens to, and it's funny because I would never expect half the music he listens to be what gets him like going before a show. Me, I'm more of like a I don't want to say metal, but I listen to a lot more like grunge, obviously. But I do have like my favorite bands are Deftones, Nirvana, Incubus, that type of stuff, Weezer. So I'm always in that type of a little bit more aggressive. But listen, we're all different, and to hear people and what gets them motivated to get on air, hey, God bless them,
Right. So Pete, talk to me about being a producer because we mentioned the board app before, and that's stress. But being a producer, you're putting the show together each day, and however the host, the material they give you, and you also have to go out there and get guests because talk shows, hosts want guests. I mean, they want callers, obviously, but you need the guests as well. And the thing about a producer, a board app, and what people, again, may not realize is even if you're producing for the Craig Carton show and it starts at 2 o'clock, you're probably there a lot of times at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, because you have to prepare everything. So your day doesn't just start when you walk into the studio at 2 p.m. It starts a lot sooner, and you put in a lot of hours to make this all work.
Yeah, I would say, the one thing about this job, I don't stop working. I just don't. I try to give myself a couple hours of downtime. That's usually when I'm sleeping. But for the most part, I really don't. I'm either doing research, what the other day I was scrolling on my phone, and my wife is like, "Oh, you seem very relaxed. This is a nice way for you to wake up." And I don't know if she's trying to be sarcastic or whatever, but I was just sitting there scrolling on my phone, and she doesn't realize that what I was doing was getting content for the show. I was just show prepping on the couch, scrolling through my phone, because that's kind of what I do. You're always, once you see something, you grab it, you put it on a Word document and save it for later. And I have this ongoing Word document that I just constantly add stuff to. And it's okay, well, this is going to be good for today. And because it's never ending. You don't want to miss something, right? And that's why you do a meeting before you go on air, and try to prep a good hour beforehand and say, hey, what do you want to talk about today? Is there something that I missed? Because there is a possibility that I don't get everything, right? But maybe there's something that for example, right now, Carton with Chris McMonagle, maybe Carton wants to talk about something that I missed, or Chris has something that I missed. We have Anthony Gallo, who's more of a digital guy, but he comes in, he helps with the show too, and he's got his paws in there as well and helps out. Hey, did you guys see this? You see that? So we're trying to always be in a conversation so that we don't miss anything that could be some sort of entertainment. So there's really no sleep as far as taking off. There's always, my brain's always working oh, we could use this here, there, the other way. As far as guests go, I take a lot of pride in it. Because I like to build up a black book, but I also want to get the best guests ever. That's my goal. We looked into last year with BT and Sal, we looked into Sydney Sweeney. That just kind of came out of nowhere, and I jumped on it, and I said, hell yeah, let's go. That was cool. I've built really good connections with WWE, with UFC, with Aaron Boone. Aaron Boone was just on with Carton yesterday, and Chris McMonagle. I've built a lot of really good connections over the years. I like to use them, but I also like to keep digging and like to find more. And I take pride. It's I forgot who it was I was talking to, and someone was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I felt like I was stalking you out, and that's how I found you." And I said, that's kind of the job. I hate to be that weird, creepy guy, but that's kind of the job. Is I got to do research to find out how I'm going to get this person. If you tell me you want me to book a guest, I'm not going to be oh, I don't know how to do that. I can't find it. I'm going to do my best to find it, whether it's asking somebody else, hey, do you have somebody that can get me closer to them? Or if I got to do some research online myself, I'm going to go and do that research. One thing I don't do is I don't pay for stuff, but I will find it. So I've been lucky so far.
Yeah, and I'm sure you being a WWE fan, you've listened to what I think is a great podcast, Something to Wrestle, which is with Bruce Pritchard, and then of course Cornette's Driving, Jim Cornette. And the thing of it is you could always learn by watching shows like that, listening to them, because as a host yourself who's been on the air, you can never stop learning on how to do a proper show. So it's always good to have those types of shows, podcasts that you could kind of listen to and you pick up things. It's like if you read a book, you could pick up things if you ever want to write a book,
Well, Mike, it's funny because being a musician, like we talked about earlier, I always will say this, writing, because I loved writing original music. That was my favorite thing to do. Was I original? Was I groundbreaking? Never. But what I did was I'd always find music that I liked, and then I'd find different ways to make it into my own. That's the way that I'd put it, because I'm I'm not making up new riffs. I'm not making up new, a new genre of music. I like what I like, and we're just trying to mess around with it and make something cool. But it always stems from something else, and that's the same thing when you go on air. I've learned so much from working with Steve Summers, from working with Richard Neer from working with Moose and Maggie, from working with BT and Sal, working with Tiki and Tierney, and now working with Carton and C-Mac. Like, I've learned so much different aspects of radio from everybody. Now every time I go on air, I've taken a little bit of everybody and I put my spin on it, and hopefully it works.
And speaking of being on the air, Pete, you've done different shows, and I catch you a lot when you're doing the overnight shows. And I got to believe this, Pete. This is just my opinion. I could be wrong. That is the most enjoyable time to be on the air. And I'll tell you why. Because it's nighttime. You're talking to like the callers, and it's just you and them. But the other thing too, Pete, is something could happen in sports right when you're about to go on the air in the overnight. You never know. Like, especially when playoffs are going on and things like that. So I just have to believe that you've done different shifts, but I would think like the overnight is so much fun to do.
So we've done I'll tell you this much, because when we do the podcast, the Rico Brogna podcast with Evan, or I've done my WFAN daily podcast, I do a lot of reaction, right? And those are definitely the easiest, because you just watch something, you have your fresh emotions right there. It's raw. It's everything you're feeling. Now, listen, does that mean you're getting everything right? I work with Bob Papa and Carl Banks for the radio broadcast for the New York Giants, and they do a phenomenal job. They are unbelievable making the calls and doing the calls live, and their reactions are amazing. But one thing that they do that a lot of people may not realize is after the broadcast is over, the rest of the week, they go back and study up on hey, we were critical of Deontay Banks on this play. Well, we went back and find out it wasn't really Deontay Banks' fault. It was somebody else's fault in the secondary, and this was the play call, and they do all this research. So we don't always get it right in the moment, but our raw emotion is there, and that is by far my favorite. I just put it out there. It's from the gut. It's my deepest, darkest feelings right there, and you're seeing it, and everything is, the emotions there. Do we always get that in the overnights? Not always. Sometimes I'm on at midnight or 1 a.m, and things have already happened. I got to wait 2 hours to go out to react or whatever it is. But yeah, it's definitely cool. If you get it first, it's amazing. I'm not saying I'm jealous, but when there was a stretch that Tommy Lugar was on air, and he got the Dante Bichette news, I think. Bo Bichette. He got the Louis Robert Jr. trade. And there was something else that he got that was I think he got the Jim Harbaugh deal when it officially was done too. But it was back-to-back nights of breaking news. He's on air. You get to react to that. That's amazing. We were able to, on the Rico Brogna podcast, get the live Juan Soto news. That happened. It was me. It was Evan. It was Sal Licata, and Tommy Lugar, who was just jumping in when the news broke. And that was awesome. That was a raw, holy crap, we got it. And we were able to sit there and talk about it. And that felt awesome. So those moments are amazing. It's rare, though, because how many hours are we on air for? There's not always breaking news,
Right. And speaking of Rico Brogna, it's funny that Evan named that the podcast. I know that was one of his favorite Mets. But as a kid, I saw Rico Brogna play high school football because his high school was not far from me. He played for a school called Watertown in Connecticut, and he was an outstanding quarterback. So I've known who Rico Brogna is my entire life. And when he, made it big with obviously Detroit, then he went to the Mets, then the Phillies. I mean, I was so happy for him because listen, like I said, he was probably 20 minutes away from where I lived. So I was very happy for people in Connecticut that were so close to where he was to see him do well. So I thought it was really cool that that's what you guys named the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an easy choice. I don't remember what other names we were thinking, but early on when we talked about it, he's like, I really want to do the Rico Brogna podcast. That's what I want it to be. And I remember calling Rico. I don't remember how I got his information, but I called him up, and he was genuinely like, yeah, I'd be honored. You want to name a podcast after me? Sure. Yeah, let's go. And we had him on early on in the podcast. We'll probably get him on again soon, maybe for like the thousandth episode. But we've talked a couple times here and there. And he goes, I get so many people coming up to me saying, I love your podcast. And it's like he's been on it once, but they love his podcast. And you know what? He's a really nice guy, genuine dude. You talk about some really good people in the world, like he's one of them. It's like, it's perfect. It's a perfect marriage that he's the name of our podcast. He gets great reaction. We get great reaction. So it's pretty cool.
And it's really neat the way you and Evan do that podcast. Evan starts it out. We don't see you right away. And then boom, we'll just see you pop up. And I know a difficult one. We talked about this early on, but was the Pete Alonso one that you guys had to do. And I mean, I remember when it broke on air, you were so upset, but like seemed a little calmer when you did that one. But that's the thing too, where you had that moment with the Juan Soto one. You know, there's moments where you're going to do a podcast that you're going to be upset about, but you still have to go out there and do that. And that's not easy either. I think of Mike Francesa. I mean, that next day after the Yankees choked away that 0-4 series, him having to be with Mad Dog and doing that show, I mean, it had to be just like torture, but he got through it and he never showed that like he was bothered by it. But listen, when your teams are hot and cold like that and you have to go on the air, that's not always easy, because it's easy to go on the air when your team wins and celebrate and things like that. It's very difficult to go on when your team loses. And you know, there's always going to be callers that are waiting to call you to rub it in or to give you a hard time. So that's the part of being a host. You know, it's always back and forth and up and down. It's never okay. It's not always, it's great to be on the air, but it's not always great nights or great days to be on the air.
Oh, no. I mean, you kind of see us at our worst at times. I mean, geez, when something goes wrong, it's not great to see our reaction, because it's like the worst thing possible. It's like, dude, we're talking sports, but it feels terrible. And I'm glad you noticed that, Mike, that the fact that like, I don't like the Rico Brogna podcast. It's an Evan Roberts podcast. I'm not going to sit there and say that I'm not a big part of it or whatever it is, but it's people go for Evan, right? Like, and I know that and I respect that. I'm going to have my time, but I want him to get his points across first. Like, I will make sure that I lay out, unless he calls on me and specifically asks for me to come in right away, I want him to get the first 10, 15 minutes out himself. Like, let him go. It's like, because I know how it is being a host on air. And like I was telling you before, like there's some guys, some people that you work with that know where the on air button is, but don't know how to read the room. I've been on air where I'm trying to make a point, and in the first 5 minutes of my opening monologue, I'll have somebody come in there and just like, you know, throw a curveball and just say something. And it's like, you don't even know where I'm going right now. Like, lay out, like, this is me, this is my time. You know, no offense, but like, I have a purpose and a point of what I'm trying to do here. Don't throw curveballs. I want Evan to have that opportunity to get it all out, you know, because for myself, even, I want to listen, you know, that's what we're doing this for, is because Evan is so passionate about the Mets that everybody wants to hear what he has to say. I'm going to have my moment too. I know that he's going to come to me at some point in time and ask me how I feel. So I know, at least in the back of my head, like, I'm going to have a say. Just wait for it. It'll happen. Maybe some other people are impatient and just really want to get what they say out there, but that's not how it works. Like, you want to give the product to the people that are listening, and the people listening for Evan, they're not listening for Pete Hoffman. That is one thing that I know for a fact. People don't listen to the Carton show with Chris McMonagle for Pete Hoffman. They don't. Now, can I be a part of that? Can I be a fun part of that? Of course. I think that BT and Sal, when I was with those two, I think I found a really good role with those two, and it was fun. It was a great time. We had some awesome laughs and some really good moments, and I found a good place there. But again, people are tuning in for BT and Sal. They're not tuning in for me, and I always remember that. So I want to be a part of it, but I don't want to be the part that, you know, people are like, ugh, get him out of here or stop with that. I want to hear the host. You're going to hear the host, and I'll be a part of it somewhere, you know?
Right. And this is like a two-part question to ask you, Pete. First off, I'll ask you this is, I know you've been producing for a long time, but you are on the air quite a bit as well. I mean, is the goal to eventually be a full-time on-air host? Because I know right now things are up in the air with the overnights, but I really think you would be the perfect guy to slip into that overnight spot and do overnights every day, because you have passion, and people who are working in factories or they're working nights, whatever it might be, in their cars, you know, police officers, whatever, you have to be engaging, and you have to, you know, have their interests, or guess what? It's not going to get them through their nights. And I think you could do that well. But the other thing I was thinking about too, Pete, this love for music that you have, and I don't think you've just put that to the back burner yet. I think that I look at like Sirius Radio, you know, there's so much creativity there. You can do different things with music, whether it's a show or whatever you want to do. I have to believe that that's entered your mind as well. So those two things, has there ever been a thought about doing those?
So right now, I will say this much. You know, in a world that we live in today, and it kind of was what I was saying about kids that are doing podcasting and stuff like that. Like, you don't need to specifically be on air to go and get your voice out there. I do the Rico Brogna Podcast. I do WFAN Daily, so I do get my voice out there, you know, a bunch of times during the week. Maybe not as much on WFAN, but I still do enough. I have a lot of work that I'm doing. So what is the main goal? I don't know what the main goal is. The main goal is don't stop, right? Like, I'm going to keep on climbing until someone says, okay, that's it. Like, you've reached the top, and that's it. I don't know where that may be. It could be on air full time. It could be behind the scenes in a different role full time. It could be more podcasting. I mean, and you're not wrong, Mike. I've actually thought about for a long time doing a music podcast. It's a little difficult because the podcast that we do, when it comes down to rights and stuff like that, like, I don't do a lot of like musical or visual stuff, because to get the rights for that is a pain in the ass. I do love talking about music. I like doing a lot of there's a portion of my podcast that we call Gore Buddies, which is me and Anthony Gallo, and we talk horror movies. So I love that. So we've done like 10 episodes of that in the past year or so, and that's so fun. Like, that's a passion of mine. I do want to interview more musicians, which I'm really trying to figure out how to get involved with that, because I do love music so much. So I think that that's just going to be part of WFAN Daily, if anything. But yeah, like, the sky is the limit, dude. I'm 43 years old right now. My career is far from over, especially in radio. There's really no such thing as retirement. You just go until you basically drop dead, I think. You know, at least that's what Steve Summers says. You know, he's somewhere, I don't even know how old he is. He's somewhere in his 70s, and that guy just won't stop working. Think about Joe Beningo. He doesn't stop working. You think about Mike Francesa. He doesn't stop working. Mad Dog Russo. He doesn't stop working. I mean, everyone just keeps on working. And I think it's because it's fun. At the end of the day, you need an outlet to put that you know, those emotions out there. Like, you have something to say, so why not say it? And now with podcasting, you could do it from your home. You don't need to go to Sirius. You don't need to go to WFAN studios. You could do it anywhere. So yeah, like, clearly WFAN has a place in the sports world and the entertainment world and the radio world, but it's not just about WFAN. There's other platforms for sure.
Right. And Pete, you obviously broke this story, but I was curious to see what your reaction was when you saw it. Now, I was driving, and it was Jody Mack and Sid Rosenberg at the time. They were the midday guys. They broke the Andy Pettitte story that he signed with the Astros. And like, literally, my heart was like fluttering. I couldn't even believe it. I was so upset. You broke the news about Pete Alonso, obviously, to Sal and BT. But what was your reaction when you saw it? I mean, like, did it come up on your phone? Did you see it on the computer? I mean, how did you find out that he had signed with Baltimore?
So, you know, one thing that behind the scenes, it's tough because I have social media. I have X open constantly, So I'm always refreshing, trying to find stuff that pops. But in this specific case, I think it was Anthony Gallo that popped in and said, "Dude, Pete Alonso to the Baltimore Orioles." And I was like, "No." And I looked and I saw it, and then I just had to tell them what it was, and instant reaction, like disappointment. But Mike, I knew this was happening. Like, I just knew it. Like, anybody that ever asked me, like, "Oh, is Pete coming back?" I said, "No, he's not." And it wasn't just because I was trying to lie to myself to be like, "Oh, well, when he does come back, whew, thank goodness." No, I just never felt that he was David Stern's guy. David Stearns was never interested in Pete Alonso. So when I saw the news, even though it took me like a second to like react and get pissed, it wasn't as like hard hitting as some other things. It was like, you see the money, because you saw the bigger thing was this is the day before the Kyle Schwarber news hit, right? Kyle Schwarber was 5 years, 125 mil. I'm like, that's not terrible. We see where the market is. Maybe there is a chance that Pete Alonso does come back to the Mets, because that's not absurd. That's not a 10-year deal for $400 million or whatever. So I was thinking maybe there was something, but when you see the news pop up and you're like, that just sucks. And then it took a couple seconds for me to be like, I hate David Stearns. That's what it is. That's what it is. I hate you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Pete. It's tough to answer this, but the teams you root for, you're a big Mets fan, big Jets fan, Knicks, Rangers. One team could win the championship right now. I know it's hard, but who would you take right now?
It's the Mets.
Somebody told you.
It's the Mets. Mets are my diehard. There's no other. Like, I took a year off from the Jets. That's how pissed I am at them. Like, I like the Jets a lot, but I can't deal with their nonsense. And I think I put so much passion and effort into the Mets. I'm so obsessed with them that like they need to win before anybody else does. And I'm so invested in them for so many days. It's 162 games. Like, the Jets, I could put on during a weekend and suffer like anybody else. But I know that script too well. Like, I knew they were going to be awful this year. I knew that Aaron Rodgers was not going to help them go to a Super Bowl. Like, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. I knew that Aaron Rodgers was going to lead to Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas getting fired. So I hate that script, but I know it far too well. I'm like not as invested in them mentally right now. Clearly, I'm pissed at what they're doing, but I'm not mentally invested in in them winning a championship, because I think they're just so far away. The Mets, I think, have so many opportunities to win right now, right? Like, the Knicks have an opportunity to win right now too, personally speaking. Like, don't get Giannis. Like, don't do that. That would be stupid. But the Mets have an opportunity. Think about this. If the Mets did the entire offseason the same way they did, but the two things they did on top of that was keep Edwin Diaz and keep Pete Alonso, I would be like, wow, this team can compete with anybody. The Dodgers, the Yankees, anybody. Right. I'm still going, I don't even know if the Mets are, going to make the playoffs again. Like, I don't know what to expect with this team. But that being said, though, like, they have to win first, because I put too much blood, sweat, and tears into them.
And I would think this too, Pete, that like, it's easy to say, oh, you hate the Marlins because they've done different things to the Mets over the years. But I think you get more frustrated with the Mets, it's the team itself, than you do the Marlins, because it's so crazy to think that the 3 times the Mets missed the playoffs, it happened on the last day of the season. And each time they lost a Friday night game. Then the Saturday game they won. I'll never forget, Santana pitched a great game back in 2008. And then they lose the Sunday game. And like, I think what makes it worse is the fact that the Reds got beat that day and the Mets still lost. So, I mean, do you get more frustrated with the Mets than you do disliking the Marlins?
Yeah, it's not the Marlins' fault that they suck. I mean, it's really not. I mean, I was at the 07 and 08 game 161. So I saw John Maine pitched the 7 2/3 no-hit baseball, where they just completely shellacked the Marlins. And then Jose Reyes and was it Castillo? I forget who it was at third base. We're getting into their little fight. And then I was there in 08 when Santana had pitched a brilliant game, and it's like all we got to do is go win tomorrow. It's fine. And the funny thing is, so my grandfather, God rest his soul, he was it wasn't his birthday, it was my grandmother's birthday. We'd always go out to Sunday to celebrate my grandmother's birthday. October 2nd was her birthday. And we'd always go out, and that'd be the last day of the season. And we'd always go somewhere, and we look up and Tom Glavine's blowing a game. Or then in 2008, they lose. It's just like it was always the same thing every year, and I just couldn't take it. My grandfather was like, you know what, there's more things in this world than just baseball. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I understand. It still sucks, though. It still hurts me. It still pisses me off. It's not the Marlins' fault. To be honest with you, if you look at the Marlins, they do it right. They've found ways to build up their team and then sell it off when they needed to. They've had some like unbelievable players, and they just give them away. I'm not saying they do it right because they've been terrible for a long time now, but they have more championships over the Mets since 1986. I mean, they've only been in the league since 1993, and they still have more championships than the Mets. You know?
Yeah. And the thing of it is, Pete, I totally understand why the Met fan gets frustrated at management. I get it, because the Met fan hasn't really seen that. I mean, if you were around for 86, yes, but that's a long, long time ago. They haven't gotten to see that championship. Now, for me, I get frustrated with some of the things the Yankees do, obviously Cashman and sometimes Hal. But like, there's the part of me that says, you know what? In my lifetime, I got to see 5 championships. It's hard for me to kind of complain, oh, Cashman's not doing this, Cashman's not doing that, because I'm just grateful. God, when I was a kid and my father would tell me about all these great Yankee teams, and they were so bad coming in last place and stuff, I'm like, I'm cursed. I'm never going to see it. But then I did, and then I got to see a three-peat. Then I got to see one more, several years later. So, like, to me as a Yankee fan, it's unfair to constantly complain when there's other fans that, I mean, God, I feel terrible for the Brewers fans, for the Padres fans, obviously Met fans, but they've seen a couple. But, I mean, I could understand why Met fans get upset. But for me as a Yankee fan, I feel like, it's a little unfair to complain all the time when I've seen so much success.
Well, thanks for having compassion, Mike. I appreciate that. Now, listen, that's what I said earlier on. It's like I'm at the point where I understand, like, we are not the worst ever. But the Red Sox, there was a lifetime of people that did not get to see a championship. Yeah. Like, there was a lifetime of people that never saw a championship, and that just kind of happens. And I have to understand that no matter how active Steve Cohen is at trying to make this team a winning ball club, you have to get the right people. You have to get the right GM. You have to get the right president of baseball operations with David Stearns. And he's got – this is the one thing I'll give you about David Stearns, and I keep on saying this. It's not really a great thing, but I'll give him this, that in 2 years, in 2 off seasons, he's transitioned a team that he wanted to into his own. Like, he took the Mets. He basically knew the pieces that he didn't want on this team anymore. And in 2 years, he flipped them, got rid of them, and now is starting to build his team. And so in 2026, no one could sit there and be like, oh, well, David Stearns has got a lot of work to do. No, this is his team. Like, so if it doesn't work out, if this is the team that David Stearns wanted to build.
It's on it.
Right? Yeah. So I got to give him credit for that. Now, am I happy with that exactly? Not 100%. I think he screwed up the Edwin Diaz, and we all know my feelings about Pete Alonso. But I'm not opposed to moving on from McNeil. I'm not opposed to moving on from Nimmo. Right. There's certain things you had to do. But I'll give David Stearns the credit. This is his team, and now go get it done. Now,
are you happy with Cohen so far? I mean,
I am, because I'm going to take Steve Cohen out of the building of a baseball team, right? Like, he's admitted, I don't build a team. Like, I don't know how to put together a good team. I could buy a team. I can make it function well. I can do all these great things to make the product better so that when you come here, you have a better experience. But the team itself, like, I don't have control over that. Like, as far as, you and I, Mike and you and I could basically sit here and say how we would build a team. Steve Cohen is saying, I don't know how to build a team. That's why I hired David Stearns. So I respect that he's giving his guy carte blanche to make this team. Now, did he go and tell him, hey, dude, go sign Juan Soto for whatever amount of money possible? That seems like a no-brainer. Yes, he did. Did he tell him last year, let's just get this deal done with Pete Alonso, bring him back? Yes, he did. Did he tell, in my opinion, I think he told David Stearns, go get Kyle Tucker. Like, if you think he's somebody that's going to be worthwhile, go make him a big offer, please. I'll give you the money. So I don't think that any of these moves that are being made are because because Steve Cohen doesn't want to pony up. It's not the money thing. It's legitimately David Stearns. What do you think about, how do you think about building a team? What do you want to do? And he's making those decisions. And Steve Cohen, when push comes to shove, will say, I'll give you the money if that's going to help you get this guy. So I am fully on board with Steve Cohen. I think that David Stearns, if there's an issue, it's more David Stearns than anything else.
Right. So, Pete, before we go, let me ask you this. What could fans expect from Pete Hoff? I mean, I know it's hard to look ahead, but in the next 5 years, what could we expect from Pete Hoff?
Ooh.
Pete
hopefully,
Hoff,
hopefully a lot of fun. That's really what it comes down to. I listen, my personality is I don't think it's going to change much over the next 5 years, but just hopefully more exposure, hopefully more bigger platforms, more opportunities. I just think whatever I'm going to be a part of, it's going to be fun. So that's what I will tell you that much. You're going to have a good time listening to it or watching it or whatever it is. And I do think that there's some really cool things that we're going to be able to do with the Rico Brogna podcast and other podcasts that you're not going to want to miss. There's some things that we've been working on behind the scenes, so I don't really want to break that stuff just yet. But I think it'll be cool because it's more interactive, and that's something that I'm a big podcast fan. I'm a big MMA fan, and I know that they do some really cool things, and I want to be able to bring that to you guys as well. So, and also guests. Like, I think we're going to have some really good guests coming in the near future, some really fun interviews. So the bigger, the better. That's what I say, Mike.
Right. Well, folks, the biggest reason I wanted to have Pete on is because when I look at him, he's one of those unsung heroes of radio, the business itself. He gets what, being a fan is all about. He understands it, and he never forsakes the fans. And to me, he's one of the real good people in radio. And that's what we need. We need good people there, and we have a lot of them. And he's a credit to that business, and he gets it done each and every day. And he doesn't stop working. He's working all the time. And I could promise you this, that there's times he's up 3 o'clock in the morning and he's working on something. And it's because he wants to give myself and fans like you the very best that he can. So, Pete, I really appreciate you. I applaud you for everything you do. Keep up the great work, and thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
Oh, Mike, dude, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. And just let's keep on rocking, man. And I appreciate all the kind words you said, because not many people say that.
Well, you deserve it, my friend. Thank you again, and best of luck going forward. And we'll have you back on again, definitely.
Awesome. Rock and roll, brother.
Thank you, brother. And that was Pete Hoffman of WFAN. I'm Mike Kenichi for In the Spotlight saying good night, everyone.